Is that right?
Here, Rudy.
Yeah, hang it over.
Take me one on.
No, this is Mother's birthday. This is Mother's birthday. Thanks.
Are we supposed to quit talking and all this? Get this thing. What did your daughter do?
That's Lee Proctor's wife.
This is what we tell you. She got her out
One of my
41
Tidwell's girls and her
years. I
husband.
told someone I thought I got
It's Dutch Coke, Perlene Phillips' husband. Perlene Phillips. George Howard, Annie Phillips, David's wife. Denzel Ray, Kite's wife. Denzel Ray. Troy Humphries. Arlene Goot. Catherine.
Okay, now my camera, real slowly.
Goot Phillips.
I brought my daughter. Where's my daughter? Pastor came with, well, her and I came together. You don't know mine, you don't.
That road.
No, that was mine. That's you know, Sue, I just met her. I didn't know her. This is my sister, Mrs. Hester. Mrs. Shaw, we're busy. I don't think so. She don't mess around with these pockets. She don't mess around with these. These outlaws.
Ralph Proctor.
Good to meet you. I hadn't seen Ruby.
Dave Albrecht.
Well, you can
Albright. And Bobby King. Charlie Humphries and his daughter. And his nephew.
We go through there.
Took him 92 years old until nowadays. 92, 93, 92. Mabel Howard is 89 today. He's her cousin of mine, Hackney. Boy Proctor, son Proctor's wife. Her brother, Hackney Boy, 62 years old, he's going to school with Charles and Don, Nina, James Louis. Their great-great-grandfather was Benjamin Welch's brother. Mabel, on her 89th birthday, she still drives. That's pretty well what she wants to do.
Well, hello here. You didn't speak to me.
Helen Mulvey.
proctors came from, who the proctors were, etc. The word proctor has a particular meaning. If you remember, in the time of biblical times, they had a procurator of Judea. Remember, that was a Roman term for a stand-in for the king. And that's where the word comes from. It was shortened later, brought up into Europe, and it is probable that the original proctors came from Rome, because they were procurators, or engaged not only for the direct service of the king, but for lower administrators. It got shortened to proctor. The word proctor today still means the same thing as it did then, which means someone who stands in or observes. For example, in academia, a proctor is one who observes what is going on in a classroom. Well, the first trace of the proctors that we have in the United States, and they came from England. Now, the proctor name, you get going back, as Mike Sampson's got over here, about 6 or 7 generations back. You have 128 grandparents, so they probably came from every place on earth. But the earliest ascertainable record we have of the proctors in the United States is when John Proctor was born in Stanton County, Virginia, which is about 45 miles south of Washington, D.C. He was born February the 10th, 1752. Now, at that time, to give you some idea of what was going on, it was still a colony of England. The United States only had at that time about 1.5 million people in it, which is, we have nearly 200 people for every one we had in it then. And he lived in Stanton, moved then in 1800. He's located in the western part of Virginia, close to Charleston, in the Kanawha Valley, in a county called Kanawha. During the Civil War, the Yankees came in across the Appalachian from the Shenandoah Valley, which is where some of the major battles took place. They cut off the western part of Virginia and made it a Union state during the Civil War in 1863 as a result of military action. So West Virginia became a part of Virginia. However, I don't know the exact year that they left, but they must have left somewhere around 1828 to 1830. John and his son Nathan. Now, John was 48 years old when Nathan was born in 1800. And Nathan is the one we're all descended from, or more particularly, I think everyone here is a descendant of John Egbert, although we put out the word to the others. We don't have anyone from, for example, Robert Claude Proctor in DeKalb is your relative, but in a whole bunch of relatives that are not named Proctor. For example, the Coopers are relatives because one of the girls, one of John Egbert's sisters, married into the Coopers, and a bunch more people that I don't know. I think Jesse knows a great deal about them. But they moved around 1828, 1830 or so, first to Indiana, chasing land grants. Then they moved to Illinois, and then they moved from there to Arkansas. They settled in Arkansas for about 5 years. They landed there in 1836, and they're in the Van Buren area, but in reality it was Benton County. Benton County is where Bentonville, Arkansas is now. It's also the area where Springdale, Arkansas, Fayetteville, and that area up there. They were located, although I don't know the exact location, the farm was located not too far from where the Pea Ridge battlefield is located up in that area at the present time. Still chasing land, they came south to this county. DeKalb was a county seat in 1840 and 1841 of Bowie County. Bowie County was structured quite a bit different in those days. And they moved here in 1841, March the 20th. So this year represents 150 years that they have been in here. They came in with 3 or 4 slaves, a couple of nearly grown boys, and a whole bunch of girls. And then John Egbert, for example, Henry, and 1 or 2 of the girls were born here, 1842, 43, 44. Over here, south, they landed right about 1,500 feet, reading of about 300 degrees from your house. About 1,500 feet. Where are you at, son? Back over in the woods. Now, you know where it was as a little kid, I imagine. You played around there all the time. That's where they landed. And I think they farmed mostly that creek bottom land in there, since that was probably what they were looking for while they came in. They were the third settlers in this southwest quadrant of the county. Mr. Booth, B-O-O-T-H-E, after whom B-O-O-Z-E, the creek is named. He settled over there at Dalby, just about, his cabin was about 100 feet from where Jim Thrapp's house sits. He settled there prior to 1839. The Dalbys came in 1839, established the Methodist Church over there, by the way, which is the oldest operating Methodist church in the state of Texas. There was one older, but they closed it. They celebrated their 150th anniversary, I think, 2 years ago. And the Proctors have always been associated with that church, by the way. Then the Proctors came in 1841, and then they built, many of you will remember the old log cabin. They built a log cabin over there where Aunt Jessie lives during the Civil War. There were 4 boys that went to the Civil War, and one of them got shot, lived over it. That was William Smith. He was the oldest. There was he and Henry, the two youngest, the youngest one, the oldest and the youngest, joined first week of October 1861, joined the 3rd Texas Cavalry Regiment, Company K, in Old Boston, Texas, and then they went to Gainesville, Texas, Cap Reeves out there, and they found, in Bottom area, and they found out that they already had a Company K in the 3rd Texas Cavalry Regiment, so they put them in the 11th Texas Cavalry Regiment, and the records remain confused up until this day. In fact, if you go look on Henry's gravestone over in the Dalby Cemetery, it says 3rd Texas Cavalry, but in reality he was in the 11th, because his other papers say that. The first engagement, William Smith, that went along to take care of Henry, got shot. That was in the Indian engagement against 1,700 Indians at Verdigris River, which is about 25 miles northeast of Tulsa, Oklahoma, at 1:30 p.m. 1861, December the 26th. He got shot through the body. There were 5 of the soldiers that got shot. I think 2 killed, and they killed 230 Indians. So they put him in the hospital, and he was discharged. That was December the 26th. He was discharged around the middle of May the following year from the hospital in Van Buren, Arkansas. Came home, and Henry, who was his younger brother, 17 years old, 16 and a half when he joined the Confederate service, in fact, went on, and he went east of the Mississippi River. And the 11th, by the way, was one of the 3 regiments that was in front of Sherman, and Sherman went through the South about 3 or 4 years later. But Henry became ill at Fairfield, Tennessee, in October, November of 1862. At that time, he had been in combat for a year and a half, and he was 18 years old. They put him on a horse and sent him home, and I've got his typed statement that said it took him 30 days sick riding the horse to get home. In any case, he came in time for William Smith's wedding in March or April of 1863. In the meantime, in May of 1862, Spence and John Egbert had joined the 23rd Texas Cavalry Regiment, which was kind of a Beetle Bailey outfit. They had a major who was an alcoholic that was their commander, and it was made up of 2 groups of people. One was reliable, the other one was the one that they used the reliable group to keep the other ones in line, because things weren't going too well across the Mississippi River. So those Rebs were cutting out and coming back home. And in fact, when Lee surrendered, he only had 8,000 troops left, and he surrounded like something 150,000 troops or something, I think. He had 24,000, only 8,000 of them could stand on their feet. They came across the Mississippi River. In other words, they deserted, and they put in an amnesty program that said if you go to join some unit, they'd forgive you. So the 23rd was way out in Gainesville. It stayed out there most of the time. And as a result, everybody went out there where it was nice and safe and joined up with the 23rd. And then they finally were involved in the engagement in Mansfield and Pleasant Hill on April the 8th and 9th, 1864, which was a very, very brutal battle. It was the last one that the South won. The only one on his feet at that time, by the way, was was John Egbert, because Spence stayed home sick most of the time when he was with the 23rd. All four of them then joined in the fall of '63, joined the 23rd. But John Egbert was the only one still on his feet at the time the war was over, because the other two had been discharged, and Spence was home on sick furlough whenever the discharge came. The 23rd was disbanded in Marshall, Texas in the spring, which would have been around May, because that was when they got the word that the war was over. They disbanded most of the troops out at the exact location where the courthouse in Marshall stands today. Well, many of the people around here know a great deal more about who's kin to whom and this sort of thing than I do, and I have some interesting little things that have about history that I want to intersperse. William Smith Proctor. Well, when my grandmother was living, she told me about Uncle William Smith Proctor. And he had died with a musket ball in his back, and I couldn't imagine what war it was, and I said, was it the Spanish-American War? And she said, no, said it was over almost before we knew what was going on. And then she got into some error, because she said that it was his son that got shot in the Civil War, or was in the Civil War, but that wasn't correct. It was William Smith. And I finally said to her, I said, well, for heaven's sake, what war was it that he fought in and he got shot with a musket ball? She said, well, son, I don't know what they called it, but he went down around Nacogdoches and fought some Mexicans. And I thought it was the Texas Revolution, but it wasn't. It was Zachary Taylor's trip into Mexico. William Smith, went with Zachary Taylor into Mexico, and that was where the United States then completely severed Texas and Oklahoma, Colorado, and part of Wyoming. Got that territory from Mexico, and then became a part of the United States. Zachary Taylor, therefore, William Smith, in all probability, knew one of the presidents of the United States, because Zach Taylor became a president of the United States. And remember, they dug him up the other day to see if someone had poisoned him. That was the same guy. It is probable that, well, John Proctor, the earliest remembrance we have of the one we have any knowledge of, was a sergeant. He was 24 years old in the American Revolution. And it is in all probability due to the geographics of it, but I haven't checked on the units, because units in the Civil War, they cleaned it up in the Civil War, but in the Revolutionary War they said it's old Mike's Cavalry. They call it Mike's Cavalry. You know, it might be a company, it might be a regiment, it might be a division. They just call it Mike Sampson's Cavalry. And they didn't have any numbers so that you could follow through. Mike got bumped off, well, it became somebody else's cavalry, so it was hard to follow through. But it is probable that John Proctor spent the winter, you've heard so many times about Washington, the bad winter in Valley Forge in Pennsylvania. He was up just a few miles from where he was born and raised at. He was voted a sergeant in Captain Ashby's company of Colonel Edmund's regiment of infantry. And he probably knew George Washington or saw him. So it's one thing to talk about who you're kin to, etc., but to look back at these people and to experience what they did in a certain period of time in history, it puts a different flavor to me. I was in Ohio this week, and as I went across the Ohio line, they have this tourist bureau. Stopped and asked them where Camp Chase was, and came to find it was in the town I was going to. So Joyce and I went over to Camp Chase, Ohio. We went to Columbus, Ohio. Going down the street they told us to go to, pull up to a stop sign, roll the window down and said, "Where's Camp Chase?" And they said, "Follow us." They had on some funny looking clothes, and come to find out that every year that the 88th Ohio Infantry, that was a camp guard for Camp Chase, reenacts the Civil War imprisonment of Confederates there. And they were having this. I mean, they were firing cannons, and they were had Rebs at gunpoint, bringing them into camp, and the whole thing going on, you know, just a little play going on all the time. It was very interesting. They had 2,260 graves there. This meant a great deal to me because John Egbert Proctor's wife, father, was captured at the first battle of Bull Run. The Yankees call it, Dutch, y'all call it Manassas. The first battle of Bull full run, about 33,000 Yanks and 22,000 Rebs, and they whooped up on the Rebs for a while. The Rebs finally got them on the run. Almost captured Washington. It'd been a blessing in some respects. They put an end to it at that point in time. But anyhow, great-great-grandpa Welch was captured and was taken to Camp Chase. I don't know exactly what all happened. He may have made 2 trips there because he spent 4 years there. My grandmother told me. But and I was looking at the documents. I have a document where the Yankees paroled him out of Montgomery, Alabama, after the war was over, where he signed the statement he wouldn't fight anymore. In any case, as I say, I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I think that probably is enough to keep you from getting too bored with a lecture. So appreciate your time, and I hope it is of some interest to you.
Hello?
Oh, they're eating on paper plates. Can you imagine anybody? So they
I bet Parlene brought them.
there's a lot of pots and pans on
What makes you think that? I had them paper plates, Joyce.
Didn't y'all have enough to eat lunch? Billy, I thought I saw you go back the second time.
Yeah. I twisted my arm, so.
Here you are eating again.
Well,
Of course, the thing I'll do is I done it.
after everybody went to sleep, listened to that lecture, you know, they had to eat again.
Hear that?
Well, I was disappointed that he stopped when he did. I wanted him to go on down to the present.
Yeah, I did too, but I didn't tell you one, didn't he?
Or we'd still be
Didn't
there.
want to borrow. Right?
They were all Proctors. Why would they be both?
Yeah, at one time he looked there, now what was I saying, you know?
Graphing you eating ain't not what's gonna make you fat. It's eating itself that does that.
Get your chair.
We tried to time it so the dishes would
Daddy
be
hasn't
done.
figured if you leave anything in your plate.
I sure did. I brought you a set.
Good.
I've got 2 more sets, but we couldn't find them.
Well, we bought you one that you probably,
Huh?
we bought you one that's a lot easier to use than the ones you've been using. It takes a little, you have to be a
Well,
little bit
like
more
them better.
intelligent to use this kind. It's
Are
the
they
only
all
problem.
the same?
Oh, I'm out of luck.
Watch out,
No,
Rick.
they're different colors.
They all black?
Whoops, I won't get the plate.
I'm telling you,
Oh,
we're all out of luck.
Joyce bought them for her 2-year-old
that ain't
grandson.
the
They're
set of
dominoes.
dominoes you brought in.
It's a real set.
I'm gonna have to Peter to come down and teach you how to play dominoes now, but he can match up the animals for you. He ain't ready to play dominoes, by matching the animals.
I'm gonna, where's that peach cobbler?
In the oven.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Linda had to have it hot, so we
No,
put it in.
I still have mine hot now. And I told you that if you didn't want the whole thing hot, I would just put yours out. I just put mine in the microwave.
You did set it.
I thought we only had 34.
We had 34. We had 34.
You say it took 36.
I took 36 to set us. How many total points is there? Total
I
points is
done
100
did
points.
90.
42 and 42 and 42. I'm gonna say pass.
Anyway,
Every bit of it, I'm telling.
I'll try about 96.
All right. That's very good.
Well, I'm gonna have you set 96. I'm fast.
Does everyone get to look at
that?
that?
Yeah, you get to swap out your
Okay.
bad one.
What'd you go, B?
96.
96.
Raise him, Pam Pam, if you can.
97.
Good for you.
Pass.
I'll never-
Beautiful ring.
I've never seen him.
Thank you, that is
Isn't that
really
pretty?
lovely.
You have to play low now? Or you gonna put 4 more back?
I get to put 4 of them back.
Build my
Aren't I
sure
lucky?
over, huh?
I would think.
Aren't I lucky?
Again. Are you serious?
No, not really.
Are you really?
My goodness, a lifetime. This scares me. That's, you got that.
Get on it. Come on, go.
Scares me too. Lord.
Get on, go. Get on. Get out.
Oh, God!
You lucky.
Billy, we need a couple of